After the conclusion of the 2003 MotoGP season, world champion that year Valentino Rossi announced to the shock of everyone that he would be leaving Honda at the end of the season, bringing to an end a short 4-year relationship that saw him win 3 consecutive Premier Class titles from 2001 to 2003. 2 of which being on the dominant Repsol Honda team, and the other which saw him win his first Premier Class title coming on the satellite Nastro Azzurra team, which to date, unless Jorge Martin wins the title this year, is the last time any rider has won the world title with a satellite team, even if it did have the backing from Repsol Honda. Despite rumours and even offers that Rossi could go to Ducati in 2004, Rossi surprised everyone a week after he announced he was departing from Honda when he announced that he would be heading to Yamaha for 2004. Many saw this as a bizarre move, as Yamaha had come off the back of a terrible 2003 season, with the Japanese manufacturer only picking up 1 podium that year and finishing way behind both Honda and the returning Ducati in the manufacturer's standings. Rossi's reasoning for leaving Honda was mainly down to the way the Honda operation ran, and was also the reason why he turned Ducati down for 2004, as he believed the way they were being ran was exactly the same as how Honda was being ran. His departure from Honda led to many people writing Rossi off from retaining the title in 2004, with many putting down the likes of Sete Gibernau and Max Biaggi as the favourites to win the title. But Rossi saw this as an opportunity to prove people wrong, as throughout his time at Honda, many fans and many people in the media were very skeptical about Rossi's talent, believing that the only reason he was winning the title was because he was on a Honda, and without them, he would struggle to win a race, let alone win a title. And it's safe to say, Rossi proved those people wrong, as in his first ever race with Yamaha, he would go on to win the race after a close battle with his first rival Max Biaggi, and then would go on to win his 4th successive title, winning the title at the penultimate race at Phillip Island. From that point on, Rossi would win 3 more titles with Yamaha, dominating the championship in 2005 before winning the title again in both 2008 and 2009 after losing the title 2 years straight to both Nicky Hayden and Casey Stoner. During 2008 and 2009, Rossi would end up being in a fierce rivalry with his teammate Jorge Lorenzo, with the pair of them having very hard races with each other, with the most notable being in Barcelona, where Rossi won the race after overtaking Lorenzo at the last corner on the last lap. The tension between the pair of them became so tense that the Yamaha garage ended up splitting in half, just like Ivan Muller and Jason Plato in the BTCC, which I covered in the previous video. Going into 2010, Rossi was the strong favourite again to win the title, but after a strong first 3 races, Rossi's season would come crashing down, as during practice for the Italian Grand Prix at Mugello, Rossi would fall off his bike and break his leg in the process, forcing him to sit out his home race and in turn miss the next 3 races. When Rossi did return at the German Grand Prix at the Sachsenring, he was still feeling the effects of his leg injury, and it wouldn't be until the back end of the season where he would be fighting towards the front again. But by that point, it was too late to mount a title charge, and as a result, his teammate Jorge Lorenzo would go on to win his first Premier Class title. During those 3 years being his teammate, Rossi believed that Yamaha were catering more towards Lorenzo, and as a result, Rossi was looking for a way out of Yamaha. And luckily for Rossi, that opportunity would come when his 2007 rival Casey Stoner announced that he would be leaving Ducati to join Honda from 2011. And so, on the 15th of August 2010, it was announced that Rossi would be leaving Yamaha at the end of the season to join Ducati from 2011, reuniting with his 2006 rival Nicky Hayden, who he was last teammates with in 2003 with Repsol Honda. There was a lot of hype surrounding Rossi's move to Ducati, as the idea of an Italian rider winning the title with an Italian manufacturer seemed like a marriage made in heaven, and given what he was able to do when he first joined Yamaha in 2004, you would be forgiven for thinking he would do the same at Ducati. However, his time at Ducati would end up being a disaster, and would end up being a relationship that would end on a flat note. This is the story of Valentino Rossi's brief stint at Ducati. After getting surgery on his shoulder during the off-season, which he also injured in the Mugello crash, and after getting his first test on a Ducati at the end of season test at Valencia, a lot of hype and optimism laid ahead for the Rossi Ducati partnership, with Rossi looking to become the first rider to win the title with 3 different manufacturers. And after the first day of testing at Sepang, things initially looked very promising. However, come day 2, there was a lot of concern about the pace of the Ducati, with Rossi being over 1.8 seconds slower than the Honda of Casey Stoner, who ironically was the man that Rossi replaced at Ducati. And this lack of pace would transfer into the first race of the season, as after qualifying a disappointing 9th, he would only gain 2 places in the race to finish 7th, whilst teammate Hayden finished 2 places behind in 9th after qualifying down in 13th. Then came round 2 at Jerez, and qualifying would be much worse for Rossi, as he would qualify in a dismal 12th, 1 place behind teammate Hayden, who didn't do much better. However, come race day, things would look to be on the up, as rain would affect the entirety of the race, and with the Ducati having a tendency to be set up quite well in wet conditions, this was Rossi's best chance to get a great result. Within the first few laps, Rossi would carve his way through the order, and in the space of 7 laps, he was already up into 3rd place. However, at the start of lap 8, Rossi, after closing up to Stoner, would make a risky lunge down the inside of the Australian at turn 1, running a bit deep and losing the front end, falling off his bike and taking Stoner with him. This in turn ended Stoner's race, whereas for Rossi, he was able to get going again, but would end up finishing in 5th, 2 places behind teammate Hayden, who would get Ducati's first podium of the season. Had Rossi not been too ambitious to get by on Stoner, one could argue he could have gone on to win, as he was the fastest rider up until that point. Rossi would apologise to Stoner in the Repsol Honda garage after the race, but the feelings between the two would be quite hostile. Another 5th place finish would follow in Estoril before he finally grabbed his first ever podium on a Ducati at Le Mans, fending off from both former teammate Jorge Lorenzo and Andrea Dovizioso after taking advantage of a collision involving Dani Pedrosa and Marco Simoncelli in front. Also, to clear up any confusion in case there was any, there were 3 Repsol Honda bikes that were ran in 2011 for Stoner, Pedrosa and Dovi, with the team's best 2 results at every meeting going towards the team standings in order to make it fair for the other teams who were running 2 bikes, or in the case of Suzuki in their final year until 2015, 1 bike. In the 7 races that followed, Rossi would finish in the top 6 in 6 of them, with Assen being the closest he got to grabbing another podium, finishing 3 seconds behind Dovi in 4th, whilst the Sachsenring would be the disappointment of the 7, with Rossi finishing down in 9th. The next 3 races after Brno would also be disappointing, with 2 10th place finishes at Indianapolis and Aragon, and a 7th place finish at his home race at Mazzano. Then the next 2 races would be a disaster, as he would crash out on the first lap at Motegi after getting sandwiched by the 2 Yamahas of Lorenzo and Spies, and he would then fall off at the final hairpin at Phillip Island after trying to pass the Suzuki of Alvaro Bautista. After 2 retirements on the bounce, Rossi was looking to make amends at the penultimate race of the season at Sepang. However, he tragically wouldn't be able to do that. On lap 2 of the race, the Gresini Honda of Marco Simoncelli would run wide at turn 11 due to a loss of traction. Marco would regain control of the bike before it went into the gravel, but in doing so would run into the path of both Colin Edwards and Valentino Rossi, who could do nothing to prevent the collision. The race would end up being red flag, while Simoncelli was transferred quickly by ambulance to the circuit's medical centre. Despite the medical team's best attempts, at 4:56 local time, just under an hour after the accident occurred, Marco was pronounced dead. His death saddened the entire MotoGP community, including Rossi, who was close friends with Marco, with Valentino even admitting in a 2021 interview that it was one of the worst moments of his life. This in turn led to Valli to form the VR46 Academy in his honour to help mentor Italian riders looking to make it through the ranks. Marco's sad death compounded what was already a terrible season for Rossi, and after crashing out on lap 1 at the finale in Valencia, Rossi would end up finishing the year 7th in the championship, leading to his first ever winless season across all categories in MotoGP and his worst ever position in the Premier class. After a frustrating 2011 season, Rossi was looking to put that season behind him and look to make a big improvement in 2012. And whilst 2012 would be slightly better, it still wasn't ideal. The start of the 2012 season didn't get off to the best of starts for the Doctor, as a 10th and 9th place finish in the first 2 races of the season was followed by only a 7th place finish at Estoril. But at the following race at Le Mans, which was affected by rain, Rossi, just as he did at Jerez, would take advantage of Ducati's raw speed in wet conditions to charge his way from 7th on the grid, and this time, unlike Jerez, would come through to take his second Ducati podium, finishing second ahead of Casey Stoner and some 9 seconds behind race winner Jorge Lorenzo. But in the 5 races after, Rossi would once again struggle, with Assen being the most notable, with him finishing down in a disappointing 13th as a result of being forced to pit due to an issue with his bike, which saw him finish a lap down. Then at Laguna Seca, Rossi, whilst running in 8th and already complaining about the setup of his Ducati, would crash out in the closing stages of the race right at the top of the famous corkscrew. With so much frustration building throughout his stint at Ducati, Rossi, after much consideration, had had enough, and on the 10th of August 2012, 9 days before the Indianapolis Grand Prix, it was announced that Rossi would be leaving Ducati at the end of the season and would be returning to Yamaha from 2013, replacing the outgoing Ben Spies, the same man who replaced Rossi at Yamaha in the first place. Despite this announcement though, Rossi still had 8 races left with Ducati, which in turn meant he had 8 more chances to try and grab a win on the Ducati before he went back to Yamaha. Sadly, although he would grab another podium at his home race at Misano, this time in dry conditions, he wasn't able to get anywhere near the front, with 4 7th places, an 8th and 5th being recorded, along with a disappointing 10th place finish in Rossi's final race with Ducati. Despite the frustration, Rossi would finish the year in 6th, 1 place better than 2011, but finishing 40 points behind the Gresini Honda of Alvaro Bautista. Although he would do slightly better than 2011, it was still nothing to write home about. And so, that was that. After only 2 years of being with the Italian manufacturer, and after countless amounts of frustrations across those 2 years, Valentino Rossi's relationship with Ducati was already over. So the question that everyone will be wondering is, why didn't this relationship, which had so much hype around it, not work out in the end? Well, I think there are 2 reasons why this didn't work. One reason that I think it is safe to say, and even Rossi admitted it himself during the Indianapolis Grand Prix press conference, which took place a week after the news dropped that Rossi was heading back to Yamaha, that the bike just didn't suit his riding style, despite the amount of adjustments he made to it. Between 2007 and 2010, the bike was catered more towards the style of Casey Stoner, and it proved at the time to be a successful combination, with Casey dominating the 2007 season to win his first Premier Class title. And whilst he wouldn't win another title in the 3 years after that, he would still pick up a handful of wins, most notably at his home race at Phillip Island. But the main reason why the relationship didn't work is Ducati themselves. As mentioned, during the 4 years Casey was at the team, the bike was built around his riding style, which whilst it would work out for Casey, would often leave his teammates, whether that be Loris Capirossi, Marco Melandri or even Nicky Hayden, being left in the wilderness. Reminds me of another manufacturer in MotoGP that's been doing that in recent years. Despite this being obvious however, Ducati would flat out deny this, with them even suggesting, like with Marco Melandri in 2008, that them struggling on the bike was all on them and not the bike itself. But when it was announced that Casey Stoner would be moving to Honda in 2011, Ducati knew that they could be in trouble, and hoped that by hiring Rossi, they would be still fighting towards the front. But when it came to pre-season testing in 2011, their worst fears came true, and it pretty much confirmed that with Stoner gone, whose riding style they were basing the bike on, that like with Honda nowadays, they would be on the back foot compared to the front runners at the time, which were ironically Honda and Yamaha. Despite the amount of adjustments and upgrades Ducati did to try and get back to the front, nothing seemed to be working, and with Rossi not getting any younger, he couldn't afford to wait around too long, and so when the opportunity to return to Yamaha came up, Rossi didn't hesitate. Rossi's return to Yamaha would end up being semi-successful, as although he would not win another championship in the Premier class, he was back fighting towards the front, winning numerous races again and being in the hunt for the title on a few occasions, with 2015 being the most notable, only just missing out on the title to teammate Jorge Lorenzo thanks to the infamous kick with Marc Marquez at Sepang. In 2021, Rossi would switch to the satellite Petronas team in essentially a swap move with the eventual champion that season, Fabio Quartararo. Rossi would retire from MotoGP at the end of 2021 after a disappointing final season in the sport, but leaving behind an amazing legacy in the sport. Since 2022, Rossi has switched from bike racing to car racing, competing in several GT3 Endurance series, with him recently making his debut in the World Endurance Championship this year in the new GT3 LM class that subsequently led to him taking part in his first ever 24 Hours of Le Mans. As for Ducati, the team would replace Rossi with Andrea Dovizioso, and whilst 2013 wasn't exactly memorable, the team would start making significant progress from 2014, with the team eventually in 2017 being in a position to fight for the title again with Dovi. 3 years later, Ducati would win their first manufacturer's title in 13 years, and then 2 years later, they would finally win their first rider's title in 15 years, courtesy of Pecco Bagnaia, who ironically came from the VR46 Academy. Since 2023, Ducati have been the dominant force in MotoGP, with none of the other manufacturers having an answer to them, with the manufacturer even allowing their satellite teams, most notably Pramac, to also fight for the title. But it does make me wonder, had Rossi stayed with Ducati for a lot longer, rather than going back to Yamaha, would he have eventually won his 10th world title? We will of course never know, but it does remain a big what if in my opinion. The Rossi-Ducati partnership, one of the biggest failures in MotoGP history.